This is an NBC special news report.
May 12, 1949, the Soviets abandoned the blockade, and the first British and German convoys drove through 110 miles of Soviet Germany to reach West Berlin. On May 23rd, the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, was formally established. On October 7th, the German Democratic Republic, a communist state, was proclaimed in East Germany. The Berlin airlift continued until September 30th in an effort to build up a year's supply of essential goods for West Berlin in the event of another Soviet blockade. Another blockade did not occur, but the Soviets reasoned it would soon have to submit to communism control. Britain and the United States responded by initiating the largest airlift in history, flying over 250,000 relief missions into the city during the next 14 months, resulting in the delivery of over 2 million tons of supplies. As the Soviets had cut off power to West Berlin, coal accounted for over 2/3 of the material delivered. In the opposite direction, return flights transported West Berlin's industrial exports to the west. Flights were made around the clock. At the height of the Berlin airlift in April 1949, planes were landing in the city every minute. Tensions were high during the airlift, and 3 groups of U.S. strategic bombers were sent as reinforcements to Britain, while the Soviet army presence in eastern Germany increased dramatically. The Soviets made no major effort to disrupt the airlift. As a countermeasure against the Soviet blockade, the Western powers also launched a trade embargo against East German and other Soviet bloc countries. Ladies and gentlemen, your evening news. The Berlin airlift has been lifted. The Western Allies organized the Berlin airlift to carry supplies to the people of West Berlin, a difficult feat given the size of the city's population. Air crews from the United States Air Force, the Royal Air Force, the French Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Royal New Zealand Air Force, and the South African Air Force flew over 200,000 flights in 1 year, providing to the West Berliners up to 9,000 tons of necessities each day.
Over 1 million tons of goods had been flown in. At 3 airports in Berlin, Tegel, Tempelhof, Gotto airlifts were landing and taking off every 90 seconds. Ernest Bevin, a central figure in the British labor movement and in Britain foreign policy, serving as a foreign secretary, added his contribution on the lift of the blockade on May 12. For 10 whole months, Allied aircraft landed in Berlin where Germans supervised by British Army personnel unloaded vital supplies. Air crews of the RAF, Australia, England, and South Africa all played their parts with the United States Air Force in maintaining the non-stop operation.
Fuel and food. The Soviets did not disrupt the airlift for fear this might lead to an open conflict. By April, it was delivering more cargo than previously had been transmitted into the city by rail. On May 12, 1949, the USSR lifted the blockade of West Berlin. The Berlin blockade served to highlight the competing ideological and economic visions of post-war Europe. Tensions between the U.S. and USSR came to a head in 1948 when the Soviet Union blockaded Berlin and the U.S. headed a year-long airlift to supply citizens stranded in the western zone of the city. Instead, they arranged for a massive support mission to supply West Berlin. From June 1948 to May 1949, hundreds of airplanes filled with food and fuel every day as the Berlin airlift. After 11 months, the Soviets realized that blockade was a failure and ended it. On May 12, 1949, an early crisis of the Cold War comes to an end when the Soviet Union lifts its 11th-month blockade against West Berlin. United States, Britain, and France. Berlin divided into 4 sectors, even though it was located deep within the Soviet sector of eastern Germany. The 3 western sectors of Berlin were unified as West Berlin.